The morning of my father's funeral started the way most mornings do in winter. Quiet. Gray light through the window, the sound of the radiator clicking on and off. I stood in my kitchen in Evanston, waiting for the kettle to boil, staring at a crack in the countertop I'd meant to fix for years. My phone buzzed once on the table. A message from my sister-in-law, Lauren. "Big day. Make sure you're on time." I turned the phone face down and poured the water over the tea bag. I remember thinking how strange it was that she called it a big day, like we were attending a conference instead of burying my father. The cathedral downtown was already full when I arrived. Old stone, high ceilings, the faint smell of incense mixed with polished wood. People spoke in low voices, but it wasn't grief I felt in the room. It was attention. Eyes scanning, hands shaking hands a second too long. I took my seat near the front. My brother Michael stood a few rows ahead of me with Lauren beside him. She wasn't dressed for mourning. She was dressed to be seen. Perfect posture, perfect smile. She leaned toward him, whispering, nodding, surveying the room like it belonged to her. The priest began the service. His voice echoed softly, steady and practiced. I listened, but only halfway. I noticed how Michael kept checking his watch, how Lauren adjusted his jacket collar, smoothing it like she was prepping him for a photo. When the final prayer started, something shifted. Lauren stepped out into the aisle before the priest had finished speaking. I felt it before I understood it. Chairs creaked. A few heads turned. She reached the microphone set up near the altar. "I just want to say a few words," she said, already smiling. The priest hesitated, then stepped back. Lauren thanked everyone for coming. Thanked the board members by name. Thanked our partners. Then she rested one hand lightly on Michael's arm. "My husband will be stepping in as CEO," she said, effective immediately. "My father-in-law would have wanted continuity." She paused, waiting. Applause came in pieces. Polite. Uneven. I stayed still. Hands folded. Breathing slow. I didn't look at Michael. I didn't look at Lauren. I was looking past them, at the closed casket at the front of the room. That's when the sound came through the speakers. A short laugh. Dry. Familiar. It didn't belong in a church. People froze. Someone gasped. Michael turned pale so fast, it was almost clinical. The sound wasn't a ghost. It wasn't imagination. It was a recording. Clear. Intentional. Lauren's smile slipped, just for a second. I didn't react. I already knew where the sound was coming from. I had known for days. To understand why my father was laughing in that room, you'd have to go back a little earlier. Not years, not decades, just 10 minutes before the service started. Before Lauren took the microphone. Before Michael believed the title was already his. I sat there while the room whispered around me, and I waited. 10 minutes before the service began, the cathedral was already buzzing. Not loud, just busy in that controlled, professional way people use when they don't want to feel anything too deeply. Shoes scuffed against stone floors, programs folded and unfolded. Quiet conversations that stopped the moment someone important walked by. I was seated when Michael and Lauren arrived. They didn't come in together. Michael entered first, already mid-handshake, nodding, smiling with that practiced expression he'd learned at conferences and fundraisers. Lauren followed a few steps behind him, phone in hand, scanning the room as if she were checking inventory. They weren't grieving. They were networking. I watched them from my seat. Michael leaned down to speak to a board member, one hand resting casually on the pew. Lauren gestured toward the stained glass windows, whispering something that made two men chuckle. I caught fragments as they passed. Historic, great backdrop, executive events. When they reached my row, Michael stopped. He looked down at me like he'd just noticed a piece of furniture he didn't remember buying. "Hey," he said quietly. "You doing okay?" His tone was polite, distant, already done with the question. "I'm fine," I said. Lauren smiled at me, quick and thin. She leaned in, close enough that I could smell her perfume. "After the service," she whispered, "we'll need you to help direct people to the reception area. You're good at organizing things." I nodded once. Michael adjusted his tie, glancing toward the front. "Don't worry," he added. "We'll find a place for you. There's always paperwork that needs handling." He smiled like he was being generous. Then they moved on. I didn't follow them with my eyes. I didn't need to. I already knew how this worked. Michael had always assumed the company would be his. Firstborn logic, familiar name, confidence mistaken for competence. What he never noticed was who fixed things when they broke. I had spent the last 12 years doing work that didn't show up in press releases. I knew the distribution centers by their floor temperatures. I knew which managers called before problems became disasters. I knew which routes failed first when weather turned bad. While Michael attended brand dinners in Miami and panels in Austin, I was standing in a loading yard outside Joliet at 2 a.m, negotiating overtime so a medical shipment wouldn't miss a hospital deadline. I didn't talk about it. I didn't correct people when they credited him. Silence was easier. Silence kept things moving. I told myself it was professionalism. That morning, sitting in the cathedral, I realized something else. Silence had trained them to underestimate me. I shifted slightly in my seat and looked across the aisle. Robert was standing near the back, hands folded, posture straight despite his age. My father's chief operations officer. He had been with the company since before I was born. He met my eyes for just a moment. In his hand was a small black remote. We didn't speak. We didn't nod yet. There was still time. The organ began to play, slow and low. People stood. The service officially started. Michael and Lauren took their places, faces solemn now, as if they'd put on a different jacket. I folded my hands again and waited. Because everything that mattered had already been set in motion. As the service moved forward, I stopped listening to the words and focused on timing, not emotionally, practically. The way you do when you're watching a system reach its threshold. The eulogy video was scheduled near the end. That part had been my suggestion. Simple, respectful, no objections. Lauren had waved it through without looking up from her phone. While the priest spoke, my mind went somewhere else entirely. 3 days earlier, my father had been gone less than half a day when Michael decided it was time to visit headquarters. I was already there with Robert, sitting in my father's office. The lights were on. The desks downstairs were quiet. People were scared, even if they didn't say it out loud. We were stabilizing things, calling partners, making sure payroll cleared, doing what needed to be done so nothing broke. The elevator doors opened and Michael walked out like he'd arrived late to his own celebration. He wasn't wearing black. He was wearing a tailored navy suit. Lauren followed him, already on a call. Michael didn't acknowledge the room. He walked straight to my father's desk and ran his hand along the surface. "This has to go," he said. "It looks old." Lauren ended her call and looked around. "We should redo this entire floor," she said. "Glass, open space. It needs to feel modern." Robert stood slowly. His voice stayed even. "We have immediate concerns. Drivers are calling. There's uncertainty." Michael laughed, not loudly, just enough. "Robert," he said, "you've done great work, but we're moving in a new direction." Then he turned to me. I was holding a stack of shipping reports. He took them from my hands and dropped them onto the floor. "You're good with details," he said. "We'll keep you where you're useful." Lauren smiled like it was settled. I bent down, gathered the papers, and stacked them neatly. I didn't respond. Neither did Robert. That was the moment something clarified. Back in the cathedral, the priest stepped aside. Robert moved. He walked calmly to the doors and closed them. The sound of the locks sliding into place echoed more than I expected. Heads turned. People shifted in their seats. Then he walked to the projector. He raised the remote. I felt the room tense before the screen even came on. The image flickered, settled. My father appeared, sitting at his desk, hands folded, looking directly into the camera. He didn't look gentle. He looked prepared. The sound came next, that same short laugh, controlled, familiar. Michael stiffened. Lauren's hand tightened on his sleeve. The video didn't rush. My father leaned back slightly and crossed his arms. "Michael," his recorded voice said, steady and clear. "If you're seeing this, it means you ignored every warning I gave you." A spreadsheet filled the screen beside his image. Rows, columns, color-coded. No one spoke. "This is not a tribute," my father continued. "This is a record." The numbers began to scroll. Investments, transfers, notes. Lauren stopped breathing for a moment. I could see it. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Michael leaned forward. My father's voice didn't change. "I funded your ideas to see what you would do with responsibility," he said. "You didn't build. You consumed." The spreadsheet paused. I documented everything. I sat back in my seat. The first shift wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was structural, and the room hadn't caught up yet. The video paused on my father's face, his expression unreadable, as if he were waiting for something to land. I waited too. As the video continued, I stopped thinking about Michael and started thinking in steps. That's how I'd learned to handle crises, not by reacting, but by sequencing. Step 1 had already happened. Attention. The spreadsheet shifted again. Tabs opened and closed. Dates appeared in the corner of the screen. Years of entries, cleanly organized. "These weren't gifts," my father said. "They were advances." A document replaced the spreadsheet, a scanned agreement, signatures at the bottom. Michael's name was there, large, confident, slanted. Lauren leaned closer to the screen. She wasn't smiling anymore. She was reading. "Each transfer," my father continued, "was logged as a loan against future equity." The words "loan balance" appeared, highlighted. I heard someone behind me inhale sharply. My father paused, not for drama, for comprehension. "When your debt exceeded $6 million, he said, your voting rights were suspended. That clause was not hidden. You simply didn't read it." Michael stood halfway out of his seat, then froze. He looked around, as if waiting for someone to interrupt. No one did. Another document appeared, a bank transfer receipt. The amount was large enough that it silenced the room completely. The sender's name was mine. My father spoke again. "The debt was cleared last month, quietly, without publicity." Lauren turned toward Michael, slowly, like something fragile had cracked. "You didn't inherit this company," my father said. "You sold it." The video ended without music. No fade, just black. The lights in the cathedral came up gently, like nothing unusual had happened. For a moment, no one moved. Then Michael turned toward me. He crossed the aisle too quickly, hands out, voice unsteady. "This isn't real," he said. "She doesn't get to do this." I stood. I adjusted my coat. I met his eyes. "This is procedural," I said, "not personal." He shook his head. "We're family." "Yes," I said. "That's why the paperwork mattered." Robert stepped forward and placed an envelope in my hand. Thick. Official. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. "Your access was revoked this morning," I told Michael. "Security will escort you out." Lauren stepped back from him. Just one step. Enough. The board members were already standing, checking phones, murmuring. Work resuming. Order returning. Michael looked smaller now. Not humiliated. Reduced. I handed in the envelope. "Read it," I said. "Take your time." He didn't take it right away. When he did, his hands were shaking. I turned toward the exit. Outside, the air was cold and clean. The street was quiet. Robert held the car door open for me. I sat down, closed the door, and rested my hands in my lap. Then we drove. I watched the city pass, steady and ordinary, and felt the shift settle fully into place. Not triumph. Alignment. The phone on the seat beside me lit up once. I didn't answer it. I waited. We didn't go back to the house after the service. We went straight to the office. That was intentional. Grief can wait. Systems can't.
The building was quiet when we arrived. It always was on afternoons like that. Most people had taken the day off, but the lights were on, the servers running, the company breathing the way it always had. Robert walked beside me without speaking. He didn't need instructions. He had already started the checklist in his head. I could see it in the way he moved. Step 1, secure access. Step 2, notify legal. Step 3, stabilize leadership. We took the elevator to the top floor. The doors opened to my father's office. Nothing had been touched. The desk was still there, the photos, the worn leather chair. I set my bag down and took off my coat. Michael arrived 10 minutes later. Security walked him in, then stepped back. Lauren wasn't with him. He looked exhausted. Not angry, not strategic, just depleted. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "You planned this." "No," I said. "I prepared for it." He paced once, then stopped. "You paid my debt." "Yes." "Why?" "Because the company couldn't absorb it," I said. "And because the agreement allowed transfer." He laughed, sharp and hollow. "You always hid behind process." "I trusted it," I said. He leaned forward, hands on the desk. "You could have forgiven it." "That wasn't an option," I said. "Forgiveness isn't a financial tool." He looked up at me then. Really looked. "You're firing me." "Yes." Silence filled the room. Not tense, just final. Lauren's name lit up on his phone. He didn't answer. "I don't know who you think you are," he said. "I know exactly who I am," I replied. "That's why this is happening." Robert entered quietly and placed a folder on the desk. Michael didn't touch it. "Your termination is effective today," I said. "Your remaining obligations are outlined there. There's nothing more to discuss." He stood still for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Fine," he said. "You win." I didn't respond. Security stepped forward again. Michael picked up the folder and walked out without looking back. When the door closed, the room felt different. Lighter. Functional. Robert exhaled slowly. "It's done." "Not yet," I said, "but it's aligned." I sat down at the desk for the first time. The chair fit. I opened the safe behind the painting. The keys were inside, exactly where my father said they'd be. I held them for a moment. Then I set them on the desk. Outside the window, trucks moved in steady lines. Schedules held. Routes stayed intact. I looked at the calendar. Tomorrow was a normal workday. And that was the point. The next morning, I arrived early. The building smelled like cleaning solution and warm electronics, the kind of neutral scent that means things are running the way they should. I poured myself coffee from the break room instead of using the executive machine. Habit more than symbolism. By 8 o'clock, legal had confirmed everything in writing. The transfer was complete. The board had acknowledged it without debate. There were no speeches, no congratulations, just signatures and timestamps. Michael's access log showed exactly when his credentials were disabled. Lauren's name never appeared again. Human Resources handled the notifications. Quietly, respectfully. No gossip, no spectacle. People don't need drama when they're trying to do their jobs. Mid-morning, my phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. "You knew." I read it once. Then I deleted it. There was nothing to clarify,
Nothing to negotiate. Around noon, Robert stopped by my office. He didn't knock. He never had. "Drivers are asking who they report to now," he said. "To the same people," I replied. "Nothing changes for them." He nodded. "They'll appreciate that." In the afternoon, I walked the floor, talked to department heads, answered questions with specifics, not reassurances, systems, not promises. By 5, everything that needed to be steady was steady. That evening, I went home alone. I made a simple dinner, washed the dishes immediately after, put my phone face down on the counter. Later, I sorted through a small box of my father's things I'd brought with me. Old notebooks, a spare key, a folded piece of paper with numbers written in his handwriting. No notes, no explanations. I understood that too. Before bed, I checked one last notification. Michael had attempted to call. Once. I blocked the number. Then I turned off the light and slept without waking. For the first time in years, nothing felt unfinished. The company was intact. The structure was sound. And the weight I'd carried for so long had finally shifted into something solid. Ownership. A few weeks later, my life settled into a quieter rhythm. Mornings were still early. Coffee still tasted the same. The difference was in the silence. It no longer felt heavy. It felt earned. On Sundays, I cleaned my apartment slowly. Nothing urgent, just order. I folded laundry, watered the plant by the window, put documents into labeled folders instead of loose piles. Small things, but they mattered. At work, people stopped asking who was really in charge. They could tell. Systems respond to clarity. So do people. One afternoon, Robert stopped by with a thin folder. "Another family-owned firm reached out," he said. "Different industry, similar situation." I nodded. I didn't open it right away. Some patterns repeat, not because people are cruel, but because they confuse entitlement with leadership. Someone always ends up holding things together quietly until they decide not to anymore. That night, I made tea and stood by the window, watching traffic move in clean, predictable lines. I thought about my father, not with anger or regret, but with understanding. He hadn't left me words. He had left me structure. That was enough. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps this space stay thoughtful and grounded. And I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. 2 more stories will be waiting for you next, and I think you'll recognize something familiar in both.